Welcome to Heian Haven. I'm Dawn. Today we're discussing Chapter 3 of the Tale of Genji, Utsusemi, Cicada Shell. This week we have a rather short chapter. Chapter 3 picks up immediately from Chapter 2 with no break. We begin with Genji at the villa of his retainer, Kinokami, governor of Ki, who has just sent his poem about the broom tree to the young wife after she hid away from him with her gentlewomen. Check out the last Waka Wednesday for more about that poem. He is still sleepless and expresses his frustration to Kokimi at being so badly treated for, apparently, the very first time. He leaves Kinokami's villa while it is still dark. Unable to banish the young wife from his thoughts, Genji asks the boy, Kokimi, to arrange another meeting with his older sister. Kokimi watches for an opportunity and finds one once Kinokami is called away to his province, leaving the women alone at the villa. Genji dresses in a disguise and is taken in haste to the villa in Kokimi's carriage. They arrive in a light, Kokimi hiding Genji just outside the shutters as he goes in to his sister. But she is not alone. Her stepdaughter, the daughter of Iyo no Kami, referred to by the attendants as the Lady from the West, has been playing Go with her stepmother. Genji seizes upon the opportunity and sneaks into the room and is able to watch the ladies at their ease from behind curtains. He sees the object of his affection in profile, but has full view of her companion, and he spends time weighing their attributes, concluding that the young wife is not as pretty as her stepdaughter, but shows more reserve and is thus more elegant. He does not dismiss the younger lady entirely, but her lively demeanor does not capture his heart as her stepmother has. Kokimi withdraws, and reluctantly Genji follows suit, returning to his previous hiding spot without revealing to Kokimi that he had peeked. Kokimi explains that he will have to wait until his sister is alone before Genji can be brought into her. Genji insists that he be allowed to see the younger lady, Io's daughter, as well, but Kokimi insists he wait. Once the women have settled in for the night, Kokimi spreads a screen to hide his lord's approach and brings Genji into the inner chamber. The young wife, catching sight of the dark figure and smelling Genji's perfume, flees. Genji steals into the screened sleeping area and lays down with the remaining lady. He soon realizes his mistake, but moves forward with the encounter, telling Io's daughter that she was the reason for his visits to the villa. She is young and naive and believes Genji's pillow talk. He finds her agreeable enough and tells her they can send letters via Kokimi. As he steals away before dawn, Genji collects a robe left behind by the young wife. After returning home, Genji, still unable to sleep, calls for an inkstone and writes a poem comparing the young wife's robe to a cast-off cicada shell, Utsusemi. Kokimi collects the poem and later presents it to his sister, who writes a reply, though unsent, on the same slip of folded paper. She wishes she was free to receive Genji and laments her situation. Her stepdaughter waits in vain for a message that never comes. In this chapter, we have the first large omission by Suematsu. In reading his translation, the affair between Genji and Io's daughter is snipped from the tale. In it, Genji interrupts the end of the Go game, and Utsusemi flees when Genji surreptitiously touches her shoulder, leaving a scarf in her haste, and leaving our protagonist to flirt with her stepdaughter. I wonder why it was cut out. This episode in full allows the reader to know just how fickle Genji's affections are. Is this a Victorian reaction to a sexual escapade? Suematsu's comment in his introduction may be all the explanation we get. He cut things out that he felt were superfluous because he believed the work too voluminous. Another major translation difference appears in this chapter. What was it exactly that Utsusemi dropped or left behind as she fled from Genji? Suematsu and Waley translate the item as a scarf. I won't tell you that the ladies didn't have scarves. They definitely did, but our cicada shell is not a scarf. Our three other translators provide us with the item as a robe or gown. This is far more likely. A scarf does not bring to mind a cicada shell quite like a robe does. Genji's poem, sent to the young wife, contains that illusion, and that is where her name is derived. And this robe is a seasonal reference as well. It is a gossamer robe, made of transparent silk gauze. This weight and weave of silk was only worn during the hottest months of summer. While Genji is observing the ladies, we get lovely descriptions of what they are wearing. According to Tyler, Io's daughter is wearing 2 sheer layers of white, seemingly without an undergarment, leaving her chest exposed down to the ties of her red nagabakama. Her nagabakama would be tied somewhere between an empire waist just under the breasts, or slightly lower at a high waist level, and she had an outer gown of violet. Suematsu has the garment, called out as a koichigi, worked with red and blue flowers, though he misinterprets the red ties of her nagabakama as a red sash around her waist. Waley also translates the garment to be embroidered in red and blue flowers. I'm beginning to suspect that Waley may have relied a bit on Suematsu's work as the translation styles are so similar. They likely relied on the same sources. Back to clothing. According to Tyler, Utsusemi is wearing 2 silk twill shifts of deep red violet with something worn over them. Washburn translates it as a singlet of simple design dyed a deep violet hue. Genji could not clearly make out the pattern or color of the robe. Waley calls it an unlined dark purple dress. Let's talk about purple. Murasaki, a purple made from Gromwell root, is forbidden to those not of royal birth, so this is a purple made of different dyestuffs, but it's nice to see a reference to ladies of middling rank wearing the unrestricted shades of purple. Now, winding back to the message that Io's daughter was waiting on. It is customary after an encounter for the man to send a morning after letter, frequently with a poem, to the woman, typically before noon. It is quite a slight that she receives nothing, and this indicates that Genji not only does not want to continue their affair, he really cares nothing for her, and all the expressions of love he uttered were for the point of conquest, nothing more. It was incredibly bad manners on Genji's part, and it's understandable that the lady, who is keeping the affair a secret for both their sakes, is quite upset. Speaking of their tryst, I find it interesting how much the story changes with Suematsu's omission, making me very grateful that 3 of the translations are unabridged. I also find it interesting that Suematsu thought so much of himself that he could choose to make things up and just leave things out. I wonder where we'll find the next missing piece. What stood out for you in this chapter? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Join me next time for Chapter 4, Yugao, Evening Faces. Subscribe if you'd like to explore the Heian period of Japan with me through the Tale of Genji.